Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of the Dad Hat Entertainment News and Reviews podcast, where we'll discuss the world of modern entertainment media, television, video games, and movies. I am your host, Sean Fontaine, along with co-hosts Derek Lloyd.
Hey everybody.
And Jesse Skillings.
Hello.
So, we're into November. We're into that headlong slide towards Christmas. You guys excited?
Yeah, I think I'm ready for it. I mean, this time of year is always a little I don't know, rough on the spirit with the getting dark early and all that. But once we get through that, I'll be looking forward to the solstice when things start to switch.
Did you guys have a good Halloween?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And took the kid trick-or-treating in Mystic Village, and it was a little rainy, but not bad.
So, Derek, did you, how was your, Extra Life event?
Yeah, it went great. We definitely set a record. I know I mentioned that game Werewolf in the last podcast, and we had, I think it was 42 people on the first round of it. So that was madness.
Is that a record?
Yeah, I think our previous record was like 30-ish, 32, something like that. So we crushed it, which was cool. Yeah, it was a great time, and I think we ended up raising, I want to say it was like just shy of $3,600 for the charity.
Oh, nice.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was good.
Did anyone fall asleep in their chairs?
It was rough. As usual, I think it's like around like 5 or 6 a.m. when you realize how tired you are and how much further you have left to go still that's usually the worst time. But my friend Bob Smith came down with it was a video game set up for this. Have you ever heard of Artemis?
I've heard of it, yep.
Yeah, so he has a really like all-out setup for that, where he does monitors for each station. Then there's like a big central screen that you can see what's going on in the space. It's basically, for those who don't know, it's like a game that replicates the Starship Enterprise sort of thing, where there's an engineer and a pilot and a captain and a science officer and a communications expert, and each one has their own like job to do on the ship. And the big central screen shows as if you were looking at the Starship Enterprise's,
Their main screen.
Exactly, yeah. And the captain's job is to sort of sit behind everybody and keep an eye on what everyone else is doing and be sort of like shouting commands and trying to get the communication to work smoothly. So my friend Bob Smith brought that setup. He even has like light displays so when you put your shields up, you can see like the blue lights go up on the side.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then he set it up so that every team that did it would earn a score, and so it was a competition throughout the night to be the team that did the best. And we held that spot till the very end, where it was pretty funny. There was a dad, one of the regulars at the store, brought in, a whole clan full of kids, and like teenagers, and they had set an early score, maybe around like, I don't know, early 1 a.m, and they all left, and then they came back 1 hour before the thing was going to end, and they saw that we had beat their score, so they all filled into the spot, and they crushed our score right in the last minute. So it was awesome.
Too funny.
Yeah.
I love the idea of that game. I mean, I've always thought that to be in the bridge of the Enterprise would be so awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I've actually never heard of it, and I'm really surprised because that's absolutely my favorite.
Yeah,
it's like right up your alley.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look into it.
Get like, was it like 6 people, 5 people?
Let's see. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, including the captain. Yep.
Oh, my friends at game night are gonna hate me. This would be great.
That's cool. So I've got another topic that I thought we could discuss this week. Actually, really quick before that, I'll mention that this week's episode we're going to be covering the series Daybreak on Netflix right now, the video game The Outer Worlds, which I've been playing for a couple of weeks, and the movie Terminator Dark Fate, which came out, did it just come out last week, I think? Ish.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was 1 or 2 weeks ago. Yep.
It hasn't been out too long. So.
It was. I think it was the first Thursday in November. I think.
Yeah. But I just went to see that last night just to get caught up. I would also like to take this moment to do our monthly shout out for any active Patreons. We do have one, Jennifer Horton Fontaine. And if the name sounds familiar, there's a reason. It's my wife. But she really supports what we're trying to do here. So she is our first and current active Patreon. So thank you for supporting the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Love you, honey. So if you'd like to become a Patreon as well and support our show, you can do so at patreon.com/dadhatnewsandreviews. It's really cheap and easy to jump in. It's only $1 to become a Patreon if you want to support us monetarily. If not, just listening to the show and giving us reviews and comments is just as great. Any feedback we get just helps the show out a lot, and we appreciate it. If you'd like to become a sponsor, we have a spot right here waiting for you that we can plug your product or services and get your information out to the masses. So that's our housekeeping for this episode. Why don't we get into the topic I was going to talk about? It is about David Bienhoff and D.B. Weiss. They were the writers for the show Game of Thrones, and they were signed on to do the next trilogy for Star Wars. But they apparently have bowed out due to their new commitment to some undetermined, at least undetermined as far as I know, Netflix commitment. So I'm curious what you guys think about this development.
Well, I don't know who would want this job now. It's definitely there's just so much pressure around it, and the sort of poorly received finale of Game of Thrones, I'm sure, rocked them a little bit. To be praised for something for so long and then to just get blindsided with backlash at the end can't feel good. And so I don't know. I it's hard to know really that did they decide they didn't want to do it? Did Disney decide they didn't want them? All that stuff, and maybe it was both. Maybe it was just a mutual thing. But how do I feel about it? I towards the end, I really strongly questioned their ability to write content without the guidance of a higher hand at work behind it all. I mean, George Martin's novels are incredible. There's definitely something different about them than the typical fantasy fare that's out there. So yeah, I think when they were on his guidance, it went really well, and some of those early episodes had, I think, some of the best moments from any show ever. You could talk about our favorite moments, and people will mostly be nodding their head in agreement at how good those scenes were. But yeah, once they left his source material, I mean, for me personally, some people, they didn't have any problem with it at all and liked it all the way up to the end. But I felt like the show went wayward after that and just never really found the rhythm that it had before. And it, of course, it felt rushed in the end and all that. I know we're not here to review the Game of Thrones thing, but I think all of the criticism that it received in the end had to have had an impact on what they could expect from Star Wars, especially with the tumultuous fan base as it is right now. I can't see that that's something that you'd be really, really excited to dive into with supreme confidence.
Do you agree with that, Jesse?
Yeah, pretty much that's what I was thinking about it too. I didn't read the Game of Thrones books, but you could definitely tell the difference when they stopped with the source material and kind of moved on to their own take on it. So that can't be easy, kind of like Derek was saying. I don't see, wanting to dive into this big, huge project that fans already hate you, like vehemently hate you, for the Game of Thrones debacle, and then for, possibly in the future, hating you for Star Wars. And that's already such a hot button issue for geeks. So I can only imagine diving into that. I was curious if they're still going to make the movies with other people now. I couldn't really find anything about that online, because this was the first I'd even heard of new movies being made.
I think the only thing I saw about any future Star Wars trilogies in the articles I was reading is nothing about the ones that they were supposedly working on, which was like based on Knights of the Old Republic, which would have been like prequels to the series by like 1,000 years.
Right.
But there might be a rumor, I don't know how substantive this article was, that they might have Rian Johnson come back. And I hope that's not true.
Well, he's been saying for quite a while now that, his new trilogy that is entirely removed from the Skywalker, storyline he's vehemently said that he's still working on it. And then for the first time ever, he expressed doubt in an interview. Did you see that? It was maybe
just this past week, I think it was.
Yeah, maybe it was at least a week.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, it was the first time ever that he expressed any kind of doubt. Whenever he was asked, where do you see yourself in the future of the franchise and all that, and he's always been like, well, I'm working on the next thing, and everything's still a go, and he's been very confidently expressing that it's coming, Mm-hmm. But for the first time, he was asked at some premiere or something like that he was attending. It might have been related to Knives Out, and his response was like, "We'll see," and the internet was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, I really hope that means that he's not coming back, because
how could they bring him back after that? I mean, there's just no way that you make that decision, in my opinion. I mean,
even from a pure monetary standpoint, they might back him theoretically, or like in his convictions to the story, but they lost so much money from him.
Yeah, I mean, for Solo, Solo lost money, right? Am I right about that? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. And
did it? I don't think I knew that.
I might have to look that up, but it definitely didn't make what it could have if it wasn't such, if Last Jedi wasn't such a shit show.
Yeah, and I should be careful. I mean, maybe, in the mind of Disney, I would imagine, only making $50 million instead of $500 million might be considered losing money,
That's true.
Right. Like, they might still have they might have gotten to the clear and made some profit, but to them it's like not the profit they were expecting, because they've dished out how many billions for the property.
Yeah, it was $4 billion. Yeah,
so they're trying to make all that back, obviously, and they didn't make as much as they wanted with Solo just because of the backlash from Rian Johnson.
Right.
So they have to be looking at that and like really just considering, do we really want to risk all that money just to support this guy?
Yeah, I mean, even if you love the guy, even if you loved his work, you still have to just face the reality there that, somewhere to the tune of half the people who saw the movie hated it. Didn't just not like it, or didn't just think it wasn't there are people for whom it ended their interest in Star Wars, which is incredible. I mean, a whole life of loving something, and then, I know that the response, the backlash to the backlash is equally as visceral. When someone's, cries that it's ruined their childhood or whatever, the tidal wave that comes back at those people is also pretty intense, and in some cases maybe even justified. But it's just not a good place for the franchise to be in. I mean, that's just a plain fact. You want everybody, or the majority of people, to be cheering you on and waiting for the next thing. And right. I mean, not to keep going on about it, but there's a part of me now that wonders, like my whole life I've wanted more Star Wars. But at this point, viewing it as a coldly as an adult, I have to wonder if the story really is built for, maybe the universe is built for it, but I'm not sure that Star Wars can be separated from that. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, the original trilogy is like this classic story, right? It's like he based it on a lot of classic literature and
right, like the family and redemption and stuff like that.
Right, yeah. And I've always looked at it like you've got this big universe, but I don't know that that's what people loved about Star Wars. They think they loved that classic story told in the way that it was told is what is really appealing. So, here we are, several movies after the end of that classic tale, and I'm left wondering, is it just divorced from that that love.
Right.
It's hard to know if they can really. I mean, it's silly because it is a huge universe where you could do all kinds of different things, and
I think a good litmus test is going to be The Mandalorian.
yeah, I don't know how I feel about that either. I mean, definitely going to be checking that one out, no doubt, and see.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching that one.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of Star Wars, I actually have like a little correction from last week. My son listened to the podcast and he wanted to make sure that everyone knew that he actually does like the original trilogy better, and I misquoted him, apparently, his 10-year-old
How dare
self.
you?
So
Nice.
I know,
All right.
I know. He was like, Mom, I like all of them, but I really like the original trilogy.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, well,
Listener
my
feedback.
heart is
We like
relieved.
to get listener feedback.
Yeah. I share your opinion.
Right?
So, all right, backtracking a little bit to the story here about the DBs, I'm calling them. I don't, again, with everything we just talked about, I don't blame them for bowing out. It's just probably too dangerous waters for them. Like, they think they just want to not even deal with it. But it also, I think that it gives them a bad work ethic. I mean, it shows a bad work ethic. It's like akin to, like, instead of an employee giving their 2 weeks, they just leave, like, on the Friday, they decide they want to quit. It's like, and they did that with pretty much with Game of Thrones. Like, they, as far as everyone can tell, they rushed the end of that show so they could go on to the next thing. And
which I thought was Star Wars.
Which probably was. They were probably in talks with Lucasfilms, plenty in well into the last season of Game of Thrones, and they're all excited, and who wouldn't be? But now it's like they're doing the same thing to Disney, jumping into Netflix. It's like, you should just make up a decision and do it. Like,
right. I would definitely agree with that. Up to the one possibility that it might just be their PR move to say that they're leaving, that it's their decision. It might. For all we know, there was, some conference meeting where they were like,
backstage there. Yeah.
Like, hey guys, we can't afford another backlash like we had with Last Jedi. You're sort of like a cold product at the moment because of how Game of Thrones ended. Why don't you guys go announce that you're not going to be, that's it. I have to at least consider that possibility. But then again, maybe you're right. Maybe they were just like, we're out of here.
Right. And just went for the next, pretty bauble that was dangled in front of them.
Yep.
I don't know. If I had the money and I had a show to produce, I wouldn't hire him. But that's just me.
Disney, hire me.
Totally.
I will be your director.
Hire Derek. He knows Star Wars, right? He does.
Yeah.
So I would totally watch those movies if you made them. So, all right, moving on. Jesse, do you want to take us into your review of Daybreak?
Sure. I was looking for a new show to review. I wanted to watch something I hadn't watched before, because with Penny Dreadful, I had watched all of it before you even asked me to review something. So I looked through all the previews on what's popular on Netflix and new. There's only one season of this so far, so it popped up. The trailer looked really great. I really enjoyed it. It looked funny, a little gory. It's zombie based, so it's gonna have some blood and gore in it. And the humor looked right up my alley, so I started watching the first episode, and it's pretty reminiscent of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'm definitely not the first person to observe that. I read a lot of reviews online that said that it was a little over the top with fourth wall breaking. It's supposed to take place in California. There's been like an apocalyptic blast, and it's affected everybody over the age of 18. So all that's left are kids, and then some people who weren't killed, some of the adults that they call ghoulies instead of zombies. And it's pretty funny that there's all the Ferris Bueller references, because it's got Matthew Broderick in it as the principal of the school in all the flashbacks. So he's pretty funny. He's this like happy-go-lucky guy who's just like, come on, kids, it's a great day, and all the kids are just, of course, so put off by him. But I got a few episodes in, and like other reviewers had said, it kind of, the fourth wall breaking got to be a bit much for me. It started to distract from the story for me. I wanted to see what was going to happen next, and I was like involved in the middle of a scene, and then they would have him talking to the camera so much that I lost interest in what was about to happen personally. So for me, it was a bit much. It was definitely funny. It definitely had some good humor to it. The kids have all kind of divided up into sections in their town in California, and they've got like the jocks and the cheerleaders, and the golf team is part of the jocks, but they're not really part of the jocks. They're kind of off by themselves trying to be tough guys. So it's funny, it's creative, but like I said, it's just too distracting for me personally with the fourth wall breaking, and it also it's a different level of blood and gore than Penny Dreadful for me, because that's not really something that I'm super interested in, and it just got a bit much. It was like gross for the sake of gross, some of the scenes.
Okay.
So it's definitely worth a look if you're into that type of stuff, and it is funny. The kids in it are good. They act well. It's goofy. It's, a fun watch. It's just not something that I'm like, oh, I really hope there's a season 2, because I just didn't get that into it.
Is Matthew Broderick like one of the only like really recognizable faces?
For the most part, some of the kids have been seen in, like, one of them is from the Disney Channel.
Okay.
One of them actually played a young Sam Winchester in Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
So he's recognizable to people that are fans of the genre, probably.
Okay.
But mostly it's like Matthew Broderick is the biggest name in there.
So you think they tried to be a little too clever?
I do. I feel like they were trying a little too hard, I guess. So it's enjoyable, like I said, but it was just too much for me.
What's the, how many seasons in is it?
It's only one season in, and they haven't confirmed a season 2, but it is like a huge fan favorite on Netflix. So it looks like the way Netflix has been going, it's kind of 50-50, because you can be this huge fan favorite and they won't renew you, but they've renewed like other shows for like 5 seasons that people aren't really enjoying that much. So it's kind of a toss-up, but it seems to be popular. So
when I saw the trailer, and this is just my personal taste, like it totally just disinterested me completely, because as far as the genre of like the comedy apocalypse, it's just like those are two things that don't go good together for me. I just want those separate. I don't really find comedy in like zombie movies all that entertaining. Like even like movies like Zombieland or Shaun of the Dead, I just didn't really get into it. It's just like nah, doesn't really do it to me.
Yeah, that's not my favorite either.
It is funny how a lot of these like zombie movies and shows don't like to use the word zombie for the most part. I think Zombieland did use it, but that was sort of part of the in-joke.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, they said they call them ghoulies.
Yes.
Yeah, it's weird that like all these different universes, it's like as if they don't know anything about zombie lore. It's weird.
Like walkers instead of zombies and The Walking Dead and stuff.
Yeah, and it really
they don't want to go the classic route or something.
Yeah, it seems like uniquely zombies though, because vampires get called vampires and werewolves get called werewolves when they're in there. But something about zombies, they don't like to be refer to them that way. It's funny.
It's like a bad word for them.
Yeah.
Strange. So, yeah. I'll pass.
So you don't feel like that's one you want to continue, Jess?
Not really. It was just it was to the point where I would have it on and I'd go to, get a bowl of cereal or something and come back to just the most disgusting, unnecessary scenes, and I was just like, okay, I think I'm good. Yeah. I'm gonna just read some reviews of the last episodes online, see if they're doing a season 2, and wrap this up.
Yeah. Okay.
So it detracted from it for me.
Yep.
Our first somewhat negative review. Woo. So
buckle up.
Yeah.
Just
that's
wait.
A foreshadowing of things to come, I think. I'll have to break up the tension though, because I actually have a really good review. So I think that'll be a nice sandwich in between these 2 reviews that I think we have here. So The Outer Worlds is a game I've been playing. It was released on October 25th. For PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Microsoft Windows. There's a Nintendo Switch version coming, slated sometime in 2020. The game is developed by Obsidian Entertainment, They're the makers of Fallout New Vegas and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. They have a reputation of being extremely good at role-playing game mechanics, which is evident looking at the history. The game is described as a single-player open-world action RPG. Some people like to call it Fallout in space. I'm not personally familiar with any of the Fallout franchises. I didn't play any of the games, but most of the reviews that I looked at before doing this review said there's really much more than that to this game, and you can't really compare them like that, one-to-one. One of the reviewers actually on YouTube stated that the game was, quote-unquote, what Fallout fans have always wished that game could be. So I think that's
interesting.
A positive thing. If you can picture combining BioWare's Mass Effect games, the universe of the show Firefly seems to be a recurring theme here apparently, but that and the best parts of the Fallout series, then you start to get an idea of what the Outer Worlds has to offer. The game is $59.99 regular price, but it's technically free if you subscribe to Xbox Game Pass, which is only like $1 for the first month, which is what I did to start playing the game. The story starts in the year 2285. The galaxy is run by these corporations, not actual governments. Each corporate faction is staking out claims in the universe for any and all habitable planets that they can. And these corporations own everything, to the point where the people who are the settlers going out to the colonies are considered company property. So there's definitely a sort of a motif of criticizing endgame capitalism in this game, which is interesting, I thought. Your character is one of the colonists who have been promised that after a short 10-year trip in cryosleep, life on the Halcyon colony will be perfectly tailored to your health, wealth, and prosperity. The plan is to send you and hundreds of thousands of other colonists out on a ship called the Hope. However, something goes wrong, and the ship ends up stranded on the outer edge of the colony's solar system. You end up being rescued by this weirdo mad scientist, think Doc Brown from Back to the Future kind of guy. His name is Phineas Vernon Wells. He takes you to his secret laboratory, thaws you out, and informs you that the Hope has been stranded in space for 70 years. It turns out that 35 years ago, though, the ship was actually found by the Halcyon Holdings corporate board, but they determined that it was best to leave the ship where it was and to leave the colonists in cryosleep as some sort of cost-cutting measure to increase their profits. So Wells is actually a fugitive wanted by the board for crimes against the colony, quote-unquote. He uses the last of his supplies to bring you out of cryosleep. The mix of chemicals he uses to do that keep you from dying from what's called explosive cell death, which is a result of being kept in cryo for so long. And the basic plot is he's enlisting you to help him acquire more chemicals so that he can rescue the rest of the frozen colonists. So that's like the setup of the game. The game consists mainly of a main story-driven mission flanked by many multiple side quests, all within what I'd call a segmented open-world sandbox. There's also an intricately woven series of dialogue trees that impacts not only the vector of each submission outcome, but how each and every NPC, your companion characters, and the corporate factions react to you in real time. From what I've gathered from other reviews, the entire outcome of the main quest can be completely altered by some choices you make in the very first mission, which is crazy. Like, that just takes a lot of manpower to create two completely separate stories right from the get-go.
Yeah.
To round the gameplay out is a fairly involved but manageable loot and inventory system that supports the first-person shooter mechanics pretty nicely. My initial impressions: the visuals are really great. The art style is very much a nod to the 50s era mass consumerism style, like the old Coca-Cola ads, the P.T. Barnum circus posters, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They come up during the loading screens. It's all pretty interesting. The in-game aesthetic is very much like the BioShock games. So if you've ever played any of the BioShock games, that's kind of what it looks like. It's got some bright colors mixed with like a grittiness, which sort of you think would be clashing, but it actually complements each other. The main character that you play is basically an empty vessel that you get to create from scratch. You begin the game with a pretty standard character generator where you get to choose gender, look, style, that sort of thing. I decided to try and make a character to look as much as me as possible with what selections they had. So usually I go with someone completely different, but this time I wanted to be the guy in there. So
yeah, I usually make it. I do usually what you just did in this one. I try to make it some avatar of me.
Yeah.
That's my ego at work, I guess.
That's your go-to. I'm going to be in this game.
Yeah.
I do that too. So.
So this is the first time I did it. So yeah, it's cool. Like most RPGs, there's a leveling system. As you progress through the game, you earn experience points by completing missions, using your skills, killing enemies, etc. As you attain each new level, you're awarded points that you use to up your character's stats. Each of the stats helps your character in different focuses like melee, range combat, defense, dialogue, stealth, tech, and leadership. You can allocate the points any way you want. However, if you decide that you don't like the way you set up your character halfway through the game, you're not locked into that forever. Instead of starting over, you can go to these stations in the world that kind of reallocate your points. So basically, it's sort of like this medical station that kind of reorganizes your bits and pieces, so that it's kind of like how they explain it. You also get to choose from different perks that are unlocked as your levels progress. There are multiple tiers of perks to choose from. Some give you added health bonuses, some let you carry more stuff, which is great because I'm one of these loot rats. I'll just go through and I pick up anything that can be picked up in a game. So I can't run in the first 5 minutes of the game because I'm carrying so much stuff.
I do the same thing. Is there a place to store it in the game? Do you have?
Yeah, there are crates, sort of like crates. I thought at the beginning, this is kind of a funny side story. I thought at the beginning it was like the Resident Evil games where if you find a crate, you put it in, and then any crate in the world would have that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's not the case. Okay. So I put a whole bunch of my stuff in a crate. I went to 2 different worlds, and I'm I need this stuff, and I opened a crate, and oh wait, this isn't the same stuff. So I had to go fly back to the same planet that I left the stuff and get it. So, be warned that the crates are not all interconnected.
Okay.
Apparently there's also a unique system that gives you flaws. So if you're prone to using your health stims too much, your character develops a drug addiction. It creates a situation where they debuff your stats, like your dexterity, perception, temperament. They get reduced by a point if you use your health packs too much, or if you try to stealth through the game, you get caught in restricted areas a lot by the guards. Your character becomes quote unquote paranoid, and this causes you to lose points for your personality attributes, which is it's pretty interesting. I think that's somewhat unique in the RPG genre as far as I've seen.
Sounds pretty in-depth.
Yeah, it gives a little extra layer of interest to the main stuff that normal RPGs would give you. The gunplay is pretty standard though. There isn't much new that they offer in the realm of first-person shooter mechanics, but it's not to say that it's bad though because of that. It all works the way it should. It's not buggy. It just doesn't feel like if you were running through a Call of Duty or Destiny, that it doesn't give you that sort of coolness feeling. I think when you use the guns, it's just they do their job. Some of the guns are pretty interesting though. There's some that are called science weapons that are rare and you find kind of hidden throughout the game. One of them that I found was a shrink ray, and it basically does exactly that. You shoot your enemy and it becomes a little puppy-sized version of that character that you can kind of kick around and kill a lot easier. So that's always fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
The gear customization and modification system they have is pretty run-of-the-mill as well, if you're familiar with these kind of mechanics. Derek, you said you played some Fallout games, right?
Yeah, in fact, I've just recently, my son's playing Fallout 4. I don't know what kind of parent that makes me, but he started playing. In fact, for Halloween, I should mention, he went as a Vault 111. He had the jumpsuit and the Pip-Boy and all that stuff. So yeah, I played.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was really neat.
That's fun.
I ended up putting a picture up. We have a dog that looks very similar to Dog Meat, so I had a picture with him there standing with Dog Meat.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, but yeah, I love Fallout. I've actually just recently sort of returned to it, and the whole building aspect of it has always been appealing to me. Setting up your bases and all that. And
so you're familiar with like collecting consumables, armor, weapons, and having them inventory. So that's another thing they do pretty much that's very Fallout like. You can carry only so much before you become encumbered, like I was saying. Nearly all of your gear though can be modded, repaired. That affects their stats and ratings. The in-game money is called bit cartridges that you can use to buy weapons and gear and supplies from these vending machines, because the corporations have all their vending machines all throughout the solar system, and you can buy items as well as finding them in the world, and you can also sell and break down your existing stuff. The skill tree that I mentioned before, the melee defense perks and stuff, they're actually available to both the player character and their NPC companions that you pick up as you meet them in the world. It's very similar to the system in Mass Effect. I don't know if either of you played any of the Mass Effect games.
I've played 3.
So you know how they have that the character sub-menu there where all the characters are standing there and you can choose which ones you want for missions.
Mm-hmm.
It looks exactly like that, basically. So they really borrowed heavily from Mass Effect, even to the point where when you're traveling within the solar system, there's like a solar system map that's pretty much almost like the galaxy map from Mass Effect, and you can choose what planets you go to, and you even see the little ship flying in the map from one point to another.
Oh,
so
well, I liked Mass Effect, and I've watched a lot of Fallout and played a little bit. I haven't really, like, it's a big game in my house. I just haven't gotten around to playing much of it myself. But
I think
if it's anything like that, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think you would like this. There's also, instead of like a full-on huge open world, like I think Fallout games are based on, the game is actually split up into like smaller individual sandboxes, which are actually represented by the planets in the Halcyon system colony. So each location is fairly decent in amount of size and scope and area to explore. And the other cool thing is each settlement and planet has a really distinct look that makes them unique. And
so
really
you're not going to forget where you are or whatever?
Right. You'll know as soon as you get out of your ship what planet you're on. And it's really cool that they took the time to make that distinction for every situation that you go to in
helpful.
Different places in the game. The shining star, I think, of this game, though, in my opinion, and other reviewers that I've watched and read kind of agree, is the depth and variety of all the characters and NPCs that you meet and their dialogue trees. The voice acting is superb. You get really invested and sucked into their stories. Their actual avatars have a decent level of facial animation instead of just like the mouth going up and down. They actually are very expressive. So you really end up buying what they're selling, and as an added bonus, all of your companions and a decent number of the NPCs all come with their own lengthy side quests that you can go to. So even you can jump off of the main quest for a while, and any of these characters that you talk to, there's plenty of stuff to do that have just to do with these particular characters, which is really cool. So it adds to the playability. Overall, from what I've played and what I've watched and the commentaries that I've read, is that this game, The Outer Worlds, is a real monument to the notion that you don't really need microtransactions, multiple game pack variants, DLCs, or any season passes to call a game in this age good or complete, or to say that any of that stuff is necessary in this day and age to make a good game. You can just take what's already been developed, make it shine, super polished, and sell it as a complete standalone game that is perfectly enjoyable on its own merits, and that's what The Outer Worlds is. So,
well, if it's coming to Switch, I may have to check that out.
Yeah, sounds really appealing. I mean, obviously, it sounds like it borrows very heavily from a lot of other games that are existent, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if it presents them in a way that you feel is fresh and new. Does it feel?
And if it works, it works.
Yeah. How do you feel about like the size in comparison to, say, Fallout 4, which a lot of people have probably played? Does it feel that expansive, like that? So
I actually haven't played Fallout 4.
Okay.
I mean, I understand. I'm familiar with it from other reviews and watching, footage on YouTube and stuff. I would say that it's probably it's kind of different because there's not, like I said, one full open world map. It's actually a bunch of smaller maps that make up the entire game. But each map, I'd say, you could probably spend a good hour or so fully exploring every settlement and every nook and cranny of the map on each map. And there's like, as far as I can tell, like 5 or 6 worlds full of maps.
Is it quest driven, or is it like you choose when you want to go somewhere and explore freely? Like, or is it like, okay, you have a quest and now you're going to this planet?
It's a bit of both. I don't know. It sounds a little cop-outy, but there's the main story quest where you're helping Dr. Wells try to revive the colonists. But as you do so, you encounter NPCs like. The funny thing is the first mission is you get sent down to meet a smuggler who's supposed to help you find the chemicals to help these colonists, and you're sent down in a drop pod, but you actually land on the captain, the smuggler. So he's dead, but you take over as him in his ship. So that's how you get your ship, and you kind of take on his persona.
That's how I got all the promotions in my life too. I just land on the captain and take over.
That's a good way to do it. It seems to be effective, but it's pretty open to just, like I was saying, there's all these side quests that you meet a character and like they'll say, oh, my daughter's been kidnapped by marauders, and then blah blah blah, and you can like just, all right, you can stop doing your main quest and go try to save this person. And you can do, and the cool thing about the dialogue trees, and there's sort of like a moral compass meter in this game as well that apparently affects the end game, and how characters react to you. Like you could just say, all right, I'll help you, no problem, like out of the goodness of your heart. Or you can say, well, how much is it gonna, what's in it for me? Like you can charge this person to help find their daughter. Or you could just say, go find her yourself,
Right.
So it's like you have all these different options, which is really, really cool. And it's expansive as far as the amount of characters that you come across and all the quests, the side quests that they offer. So you can do any of these quests in any order and it doesn't affect the main story. So I guess it's a little bit of both, to answer your question.
Okay. Yeah, I hope you felt that the moral compass aspect of it was well done.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty well balanced. And from what I've read, I've only gotten in like 6 or 7 hours of gameplay, and I'm at level 10, where I guess most people at end game level is probably like level 25. So that's probably kind of an indication of how much I've gone into it.
That's one thing about a lot of the games that focus on morality, which I like the idea of it, but I always feel like that they're executed in a very simplistic way that is so transparent. I almost wonder why you're even doing it. I mean, classic examples of games that people loved that I found to be that aspect of it wasn't handled particularly well. We're going way back here, but what was the first of the big? Was it Knights of the Old Republic that had a strong morality?
I think that's the only one I can remember really that far back that had a morality meter.
I just feel like they have to be really complicated to be enjoyable for me. So, for example, you even just mentioned one there that this game might do, but what's another game that did it? Like Dragon Age did it a lot, but it was so obvious that I was like, you're why don't you just ask me what you want? Like, for example, you'd go up and there'd be somebody's like, oh, my husband is captured by spiders out in the field. Will you please help me? And you are given 3 potential options, and they're so transparent. Like the first one is like, of course, I will be happy to help you. And okay, you're the good guy. And then there's the neutral one. It's like, I'll help you, but I need money. And then there's the one like, I'm going to kill you and your children and then your father when I find him. It's like, I'm like, all right, it's all so obvious that what's the point? I mean, I like when they're actually difficult moral situations, like should you or should you not help this person? And I think
that affected the gameplay if you like chose the not so moral or nice option.
Sometimes it affects the gameplay in that your reputation precedes you. So you might go to another town and they'd be like, "Oh, this is that guy who kills everybody," and they're not nice to you.
Or...
Yeah, that sort of thing.
I think this
okay.
game really does a good job of balancing it, and you probably would be pretty impressed if you tried
cool.
it out. Again, like going to the first mission, I don't want to give too much away, but there's like this settlement, and you're talking to the head of the settlement, trying to get the resources that you need, meet the people that you need to meet. And apparently, there's a situation where some of the colonists have branched off into their own separate little faction because they don't want to be under the thumb of the corporation. And so you go and meet them, and they're like, they're just trying to live their life, and but they all share like power from this power grid. And you have this option, like, you have to divert the power to get this regulator that will make your ship fly, but you can either divert power from the settlement back to the faction settlement to the main settlement, or you can like leave it the way it is and steal the main settlement's power supply. So like, you know what I mean? Like there's two groups of people that need the power, and it's up to you,
Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
and the way they present it is not like, oh, we're a bunch of evil soldiers that need the power, and we're a bunch of good people that need the power. Like there's all good people in both, So
Yep. Yeah, that's good. That's the way it should be.
So it is pretty, and then again, like other games, like you said, the reputation precedes you. But sometimes, like, your reputation will be bad with one faction, but another faction hates that faction, so they'll automatically start liking you more because you're hated by the other faction. So they do a lot of interconnectivity with that. It's pretty well done.
I like that.
So yeah, I highly recommend the game. I think it was really done well, and I like the idea that it's just a standalone game all on its own. That's the same mentality. Like I'm building, my game Future Tech Space Combat Academy with the same idea, where everything you want to play is in the game right from the get-go. You just buy it and it's there.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I'm definitely going to check this one out.
So it's good stuff. All right, moving on. I think we're going to get to the bottom of the sandwich that we were talking about, the not so happy sandwich.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions. I am going to start off by saying, before I get into the review too much. So I have this aversion that it tends to come up a lot lately, especially in recent years. The colon appearing in movie titles and whatever follows it. It is not a perfect barometer to use, but if I can say the title of the movie in a stupid voice and it sounds stupid to me, then there's already one sort of check mark or one strike against the film.
Down one star.
That is quite the litmus test.
Yeah, and the word dark or rising appearing in any title at any point ever immediately sets me on edge. So, you could be like, Terminator, Dark Fate. If you say it like that and it sounds ridiculous, you probably should rethink your title a little bit. It's sort of a bad title. And Dark Knight Rising. You kind of just say it in that standard movie voice, and if it sounds silly right away, I'm kind of like put off by it. But that's a diversion. I just wanted to get that off my chest in case anyone important is listening that has any effect on titling movies. Stop with the colons. You don't need to do them so much.
Listen to him. He knows.
I mean, come on. So I'm reviewing Terminator Dark Fate, and it is directed by Tim Miller. One of the interesting facts about this is that it's the return in some capacity beyond just silent producer of James Cameron, who brought us the first two movies in the franchise. Slight spoiler here, those first two movies are still the best. This in no way tops or really adds a lot of things that are new to it. First off, it's important to know that this film basically ignores all the things that happened in the previous Terminator sequels that came after Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So that includes Terminator 3 Rise of Machines, Terminator Salvation, and Terminator Genesis. I think that was all of them. I suppose it also invalidates the television series. I never saw it, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Did either of you ever see that?
Yeah, it was fun.
I didn't actually.
I think that I haven't seen them, so I'm making a guess, but I would assume that this also invalidates what those movies did.
In a big way, it does.
It does,
because
okay.
of the beginning, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, right. So yeah, another. This is going to be. It's going to have some spoilers in here. There's at least one thing that I absolutely want to talk about that is a right off the bat spoiler. So yeah, be warned. So it's also, this movie is effectively then a direct sequel to Terminator 2. And in the convoluted universe of the Terminator franchise, it's probably still possible to imagine that this sequel can somehow exist as an alternate version of the previously established timeline, but I don't really think it's worth much effort or thought to iron all that out. Honestly, I feel pretty much everything after T2 and even some parts of T2 itself were not really worthy follow-ups to the unique awesomeness of the original. Second, Terminator Dark Fate commits a fairly egregious sequel sin right off the bat. It more or less invalidates the successes of the heroes from the previous film. And very much like the number one offender of this sequel transgression, in my opinion, is Alien 3.
I was going to say that.
I mean, that's that movie, like, before the credits, the opening credits have even finished, every success of Aliens, or Alien 2, Aliens, they might as well have just died. I mean, I think we could talk spoilers at this point about the Alien franchise, and like, I mean, it opens.
I don't know.
I mean, Newt is dead, and like, she was the whole quest of the second movie, and Reese, like the whole arc of their relationship, and the respect Ripley ultimately earns, and I mean, just to invalidate it all, like, before the credits have even finished. It's something I can't stand when movies do that.
Like, you wish Hicks had been eaten by the Queen in the one before it, instead of just the dumb fate that he had.
It's so awful. And I know that there's reasons why it landed there. I mean, I think that the script was originally written without Ripley in it, and it was going to be this... Because on its own, the concept of Alien 3 is great. Like, I love really the rest of the movie. I just feel like it shouldn't have tried to progress the storyline there, but the studio insisted on Sigourney Weaver, continuing to be in it, which I get because she's great. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Mm-hmm. The basic plot of Terminator Dark Fate, it's about 20 years since the events of T2 has happened. The opening scene, it's hard to talk about this because it has a major spoiler in it, and I'm gonna say it. So they do an absolute. I actually think it's maybe the best scene in the movie. I was sort of awed by it, and I was like, it's one of the the few things that I kept considering when the movie was over. It opens with Sarah Connor sitting on what seems kind of like some sort of like resort in Mexico, mm-hmm. and her son John Connor is at a bar, and he's having a conversation with a girl at the bar, and she's sort of watching him as she sits and just observes him being a kid or being a teenager, and all of a sudden Arnold Schwarzenegger in full Terminator mode walks up and kills him.
Young Terminator.
Young Terminator. And that's the thing that about this opening. I was like, the scene ended, and I'm like, that must have been footage that they didn't use, or they manipulated film in some way. Apparently, this is all done with the de-aging technology, which is, gaining some popularity. Mm. And it is incredible how they made Sarah Connor look. It was just, Linda Hamilton, I should say. It's just unbelievable how good that tech. It was seamless. There wasn't anything about it that I was like. I mean, like I said, I thought they must have used old footage, and apparently they had also another actor play Eddie Furlong, young John Connor, and they probably did some manipulation to his face. I saw the actual child actor that played him, and he does look a lot like him, but he sort of turns around, and it was really a cool moment. He turns around, and I was like, how did they do this? So yeah, big spoiler. He gets wrecked right in the beginning, and then the movie sort of jumps forward the 20-year leap at that point, and we're introduced to what the character that's really the focus of this film, which is played by the actress Natalie Reyes. I think I'm saying her name right. She's the focal character, Danny Ramos. She lives in Mexico City with her brother and her father. And after a few expositional scenes, we're introduced to a familiar situation, if you've seen all the previous movies, where Danny discovers that she's being targeted by some futuristic robot bent on her destruction. And this Terminator that's chasing her reminds us very much of the Robert Patrick model from Terminator 2, in that he's composed of that liquid metal that allows him to perpetually reform himself, even under the most dire of destructive situations. This model has like a interesting new feature that allows him to split into two forms that work in tandem. One looks like whatever person he's attempting to imitate, and the other form is that of like this black skeletal humanoid. I'm not sure how the physics of all this works, because he's basically becoming two separate people from the mass of one. I mean, you can make up stuff in your head, I guess, that makes it work. And
I think from what I've seen in the designs, it's like, how the new the endoskeleton, the dark one, has like almost half a head and very minimal ribcage structure. I think I was reading that was to explain like where the extra liquid mass was being kept. I don't know. Yeah,
it's weird though. Like, what's the purpose of? I don't know. Again, this is all just verisimilitude type stuff. But like, what's the purpose of a skeleton inside a liquid metal form? I don't know. It seemed all.
It is not exactly new. They did the TX. The who's the person that did that? It was in Terminator. What's the third one?
Third one, like the one after T2?
Yeah.
Rise of the Machines, maybe? Or Terminator Salvation?
Rise of the Machines.
I can't remember the order of them.
I know.
The TX played by Kristanna Loken. She, the...
Oh, right. With Claire Danes in it.
Yeah, that had the metal endoskeleton with liquid over it as well.
Okay, yeah, so they're sort of rehashing some of that. So yeah, I mean, it didn't really like ruin anything for me. It was cool looking. I mean, it wasn't like it was stupid looking or anything. So the main character, or the main focus anyway, Danny, she doesn't go it alone against the machine. She has help, just as Sarah Connor had help from Kyle Reese in the first film. This time, her guardian is played by Mackenzie Davis, who's the character Grace. And she's an enhanced human that's undergone some major technical modifications that make her into some kind of like a superhuman soldier. She knows what they're up against, and she tries to keep this new Rev 9 Terminator model from killing Danny. And the movie will do some time jumps. It'll, as people think back or think ahead, I guess, to their previous existence, it'll jump and show you a little bit of Grace's backstory. You'll understand more about where she came from, and that ties into the main plot that I'll remain from spoiling, I guess. But even Grace will prove to not be quite enough to save Danny, because they'll soon acquire another member of the team, and that's Sarah Connor herself, who, as it turns out, has become quite adept at facing off against Terminators. The film storyline progresses in, I don't know, I felt like there were predictable directions from that point forward. We know from the trailer that Schwarzenegger appears in this movie, and that preloaded knowledge sort of, I don't know, you know where the movie's going when it drops certain hints, like Sarah Connor, she's been receiving information from an unknown source, letting her know where and when certain Terminator arrivals are happening, so she can be there to thwart them. And the movie wants it sort of implied that that's the mystery, but everybody watching the movie knows, like, okay, you can make a guess as to where that's coming from. Maybe you don't put all the pieces together quite yet, and why it's going to be Arnold, but I mean, the fact that he's in the trailers themselves, I think, is enough information to kind of get you there. But there's a lot of things to discuss about the movie that are, like Schwarzenegger's character, for example, like how we find him. I think it's important to talk about this again. I know these are huge spoilers, but he is sort of like a Terminator. The idea of like why the Terminator shows up and kills John in the beginning. He the story sort of implies that there were multiple Terminators sent. The one that we see, battling them in Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 is one of many. But there's a problem with that. Like, why do they all look like Arnold Schwarzenegger? Like, if there's this futuristic robot organization that's creating these things and sending them back, why, and they can create this biological form that wraps around it, why would you have them all look the same? It's just something about it. It doesn't.
It's not very sneaky.
Yeah, it's just a major plot hole, or or you can just see like the reason is because they want Arnold Schwarzenegger to be the actor in this movie. That's the reason why he looks that way.
That probably was the reason.
Yeah, it's definitely it.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of just like look past all that and make up whatever reason helps you make sense of it.
Yeah, like Skynet. Hey, I spent all this time making this mold for this guy. I'm going to use it.
Right. Yeah. The purpose of this creature is to blend in with humans so it can infiltrate. Let's make them look all identical. Didn't I just see you, dude? Like,
that was not me.
Yeah. So there's some of that, and so the one that sort of offs John in the beginning of the movie is one of the others that were like sent back. They sent multiple ones back, and after committing or completing its mission, this movie implies that it's left to exist as this, AI being that has completed its quest. And what does it do? It's just sort of left to live on its own. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I fully buy the movie's offering here. Again, I think it's more just about a way to get Arnold Schwarzenegger to still be in the movie. Is it a better film if they didn't kind of follow this road where, I don't know, he's got a family. He's got a family now. It's so weird. And
I sort of like it in a way.
Yeah, you go along for the ride for sure. I mean, you're there, and he's got his jokes, and they do address some of the things like, how are you guys a couple? And he's like, our relationship is not physical, and they give you some impression there that that there's some story left to tell there, that why is he protecting this family and all that. But yeah, they ultimately will come to him, and then together as a team, they decide they're going to work together to defeat this, Terminator that has come to kill Danny. So, yeah, I mean, that's just one of many things. I mean, the problem with the movie largely is that it's just a totally recycled plot. It's almost nothing new to offer the story. Like, they basically are like, yeah, Sarah Connor, she accomplished her goal of stopping her future that was going to lead to humanity being destroyed by Skynet. And now it's just like, well, you accomplished that. Well done, you. And now, despite all your best efforts, some other organization has sprung up that basically did the exact same thing as Skynet. And it's called Legion. And now it's trying to basically go back in time just like Skynet did, and off the threat from the past that will, ruin their future. So it's like it literally is just like a completely recycling of the plot. The only new things that are added in my opinion, are like, some of the special effect options that they have with the new Terminator. But even that was like, it felt like you're just seeing T2 again. Mm-hmm. Like the liquid metal is not a lot more other than the split body there. So yeah, I mean.
I would imagine it's hard to come up with new stuff at this point.
Yeah, I wonder if just this, we've had the story. I'm not really sure that there's a lot more to tell here. And oddly, I think this is the first in a trilogy, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
I think that's what I think I heard that this is perceived. Assuming it does well at the box office, it's going to be the first of a new trilogy. Yeah, I mean, like even I'll Be Back reappears, I guess, as you would expect it to, and this
Kinda
time
has to.
Yeah. I won't spoil who says it, but
everybody.
Yeah. And it has a couple of like tropes that you kind of are seeing in this, somebody's got to sacrifice themselves, and the whole use my power core to save us. It was like it felt very like Deus Ex Machina kind of thrown in at the end as a way to defeat the big thing that I don't know. I mean,
which they also use that same idea in that movie with the TX model to use the power core to destroy the Terminator with the liquid metal outside.
Yeah,
they did that exact same thing again.
Yep, it's just all recycled. The action is pretty cool if you can swallow like the over the top stuff. I mean, there's that scene on the dam that I was just like, Hollywood makes these scenes that are, I almost feel like if they grounded them a little more and made them a little less of a spectacle. I don't know. This may be a silly comparison to make, but like, you think about the great scene in Jurassic Park. I know. We're talking about a Steven Spielberg movie here, so it's a big difference than Steven Spielberg. Tim Miller is not Steven Spielberg, and maybe
right.
It's too much to expect of that. But like, with the T-Rexes sort of chewing on the car in the first movie in Jurassic Park, like it's very similar setup. Like there's this car teetering on this edge, but we're like really grounded in that scene, and you sort of. It's not so much of a spectacle that you're like lost in an ocean of special effects. You feel like you're really in the car with those kids when it goes over the edge. It's like really well done. Whereas this one, the car on the edge of the dam before it slides down, and I was like, could this really happen? I mean, aren't you just like a sack of meat in a car that like rolls down the side of a dam into the water? Like just being in a vehicle doesn't mean you smash into things less. Like you're, I don't know. Like,
I think I heard Grace say, "Buckle in."
Buckle in, yeah. Right. And the movie knows it's ridiculous because the response is like that's going to do anything, or something. Because, that'll save us or something like that. But, yeah, sure enough.
At least they know.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I mean, it's got all these, ridiculous things in it. Now, all that said, I know I just crapped on it heavy. I was along for the ride. I didn't hate the movie. I feel like if I've got to give it like some kind of a star rating, if I'm going to be a little generous, I think that this is like really a classic, like, 3-star movie, maybe 2 stars. If you come to it with like, I'm thinking like the average moviegoer, I would give it personally. It's a 2 for me, 2-star movie. But I feel like most people who come to this, they, I hate this when people say this. They're all, I just want to go to a movie and turn my brain off and just let it wash over me. If that's your thing, it's probably a 3-star movie for you. It's not as bad as, say, like a Transformers movie. There's something there to chew on, but
I'm sure the nostalgia plays a part.
It does, yeah. And like there are a couple of moments that are sort of funny. Like Schwarzenegger drops a couple of lines that mostly work. But
mostly work.
Yeah. So, and there's a couple of neat little trivia pieces before we open this up that I found out when I was like, sort of doing a little reading about it. Kind of neat things. This is Linda Hamilton's first movie where she gets top billing, and it's also the first Terminator movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger is billed second, which I thought was kind of neat.
Oh.
This was a really cool thing. The phone number. I sort of alluded to the fact that Schwarzenegger's Terminator has sort of integrated himself into society in a way. And his name is now Carl. He has the name of Carl. And he has a van that's parked in the driveway. Did you hear this, Sean, about the number on the van?
No, I haven't.
So the phone number on Carl's van is, it's got an 888 prefix, but you can drop that. The number is 512-1984, which is a reference to May 12th, 1984, which is the date that the T-800 arrived in the first Terminator movie. Kind of cool little inside thing.
Yeah, it's a nice little Easter egg.
Yep. And then one other thing that I mentioned, I actually didn't catch this in the movie, but with the degree to which the film focuses on it, how he has a dog. Mm-hmm. In the first movie, it was established that dogs can detect and they bark incessantly at Terminators.
Yep.
So humans, that's why humans employ them as an early detection system and all that. But here we have Carl, who owns a dog that's quietly allows him to pet it, and there's a idea that that's sort of a way to subtly signal that he has in fact changed and become more human-like and empathetic and all that. So that was kind of a neat little thing anyway. But So you also saw this, Sean, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's a solid.
You
2.
sound so enthused.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a way to put it. It's a solid 2. I mean, again, like there's some interesting action and there's some minimal points of nostalgia that I really are the only places that I ever would have gravitated to in this movie where like I felt anything, because at the very beginning, like you said, in the first 5 minutes, John Connor's dead. And it totally shut me off emotionally from the rest of the movie. Like once that happened, like they were teasing, the original feature war where they were coming out of the water, like in the Normandy kind of invasion kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they had the T-800s coming out of the water with the classic plasma rifles, and you can see the classic HKs flying over. I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And then it cuts to the beach, and then that happens, and I'm like, what the actual fuck? Like I totally was so mad right then and there, and I'm just like, fine, I'm just gonna watch this from a technical point of view, whatever.
Yeah. Yep. The thing is, I feel like the filmmakers, they're like, I don't know, I think that when they do something like that, they're like, this is gonna pull the rug out from underneath everybody, right? So they write a scene like that, they film a scene like that. Their goal is to be like, all bets are off. You're on for a ride you didn't expect. They do something like that just sort of like rocks you in the beginning, but I don't think that it often has that intended effect. What it really does is it undoes the successes that we come to the film with, right? Like everything that she fought for in Terminator 2. It's like,
especially in a franchise like this where it's very fan based,
it's important to respect that stuff. I mean, we talked about in the last episode, The Last Jedi, and all of the the sins that movie committed for that. I mean, that's the ultimate, that maybe is the ultimate for doing that sort of thing, is just, I mean, what was the point of them defeating the Empire at all? I mean, they might as well have just said, hey, Palpatine, like, you're a cool dude, man, like, just don't kill us, let's all live in peace and do your thing, because like it's just the First Order, like Luke, Leia, and Han's life went on to be not so great, like all that stuff just leaves you feeling bad, like you feel you come to this as
what were they fighting for,
right? Yeah. I mean, I'm all about, I loved the idea of passing the torch to a new generation and having these, like, the old legacy actors do that, just this movie sort of has that same sort of effect where it's hard to, if you're going to accept it as the part of the canon going forward. Now, when you return to watch T2, you're just like, well, don't fight so hard. I mean,
what's the point?
Don't exhaust yourself. It's okay.
It's only going to get worse.
At least in this movie, it has the it could have sort of fixed that with at least she still prevented the future. That was what she accomplished in T2. Her son ended up not needing to be the guy who,
right.
So why not just waste him in the first 5 minutes? But but they undo that. I mean, even that gets undone. It shows us by the plot of this movie, she might as well have just let Skynet win, because now it's Legion that takes over, and you apparently can't alter the future even when you alter the future. I don't know. It's weird.
Right. And then they called it Judgment Day. Like, it's funny when Sarah Connor was talking to Grace about the future that, she knows, and Grace is like, I don't know any of the stuff that you're talking about, but yet they still call it Judgment Day.
Right, yeah.
So, I don't know. I didn't like I respect that by destroying the idea of Skynet and not having Skynet ever being created, because John Connor and Sarah Connor, they all won. I just don't like that it's not a thing anymore.
Right.
Like, I don't have any investment in wanting to defeat Legion because it just got thrown in there. It's like another dude, like just from the side, like, oh, the big baddie's gone. Hey, I know how to kill people too. I'm the baddie now.
Right. I mean, like,
who cares?
What are we gonna do? What do we do now? Are we gonna watch a new trilogy that has these guys defeat Legion? But what is that? What is it preloaded with now? Like, yep, defeat that one, because next time it's gonna be Robot Charlie and his new army that come back to, like, it's just going to be something else, like, it's a future you can't prevent. It's just going to happen anyway. I don't know. It's hard.
I wish they had continued on with the Terminator Salvation angle and just show Future War. Like, I would have been all for watching a couple of Future War movies, you know?
Sure, yeah.
I like Terminator Salvation.
Yeah.
I didn't see this one yet. I wanted to. And I probably still will. I don't know if I'll see it in theaters. And I know what I'm getting into reviewing things with you guys, so I figured there'd be a bunch of spoilers anyway.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal to me. But Terminator is kind of like the Fast and Furious movies for me. Like, it's a guilty pleasure. I'll keep going back to see more and more, even though they're terrible. So
Yeah.
I think I'll probably still see this no matter what. But
Yeah, it's not entirely not worth your time. I do think that there are some pleasures in it that I think still make it, especially if you've been there for all the previous ones. It's
I really enjoyed the previous ones,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, Terminator 2 for me was I loved basically everything about it,
Me too.
But I'm sorry, Eddie Furlong. I do think that you were miscast there. He was hard to like at certain points.
I was never a fan of him, even when I was like younger and that age.
Yeah.
I like watching it. I was like, oh, he's so.
Yeah.
Sorry, but annoying.
Yeah, he was just.
He wasn't a great actor. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second.
Puppies.
There's nothing there. My goodness. Anyway, sorry about that interruption.
That's okay.
So
Are you a Terminator? Is that what's going on? I get what's going on, Sean. I get it.
my name's Carl. But yeah, sorry, that kind of threw me for a loop. Yeah, it's not like I won't ever not watch another Terminator movie, I guess. I mean, it's not as bad as what Rian Johnson did to Star Wars, in my opinion. Like,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, and who knows? Maybe there's some. If this truly is a part of some trilogy, maybe this is this is the ease us back into it, and maybe they'll provide some future script detail. I mean, supposedly James Cameron wrote this, but another red flag is when you kind of see who wrote movies. If 8 people are billed in the writing, I always feel like that's not a great sign. I mean, I know everybody wants to get their name on these movies because it helps their career, but this movie, it says story by James Cameron, and then it goes on to list like 8 other people. So I don't know. I feel like too many visions sometimes can get mingled up in this, and a story that might have been great is not great anymore.
so it's a 3 for you?
I think for the general public, this is so cheesy for me to do this, but for me personally, it doesn't rate much higher than a 2. Maybe 2.5 if I'm being kind. I wasn't bored. At no point did I want to be like, I'm out of here. I'm wasting my time or anything like that. So that's something. Some of the acting was cool. I mean, Linda Hamilton's awesome, so it's cool to see her, even though they give her lots of cheesy dialogue here and there. And
she's so badass.
She
though.
is. She really is. She seems like legitimately badass. I love her. So it was cool to see her do her thing, and I thought the trio of the 3 women that carried the movie was pretty good. There was nothing there that they were all good actors, and Mackenzie Davis was the first time that I remember her now. She played the enhanced human that comes back to help her. And it's only the second film that she's been in about hunting down robots, because she also appeared in Blade Runner 2049.
Oh.
Which I thought was cool. And she also had a role in The Martian, although it's been a while since I've seen it and I can't remember who she was in that. But those are her other two titles. But she's somebody who I think we're going to see a lot more of. She did a good job. And so,
What did you think of the whole enhanced human angle?
It seemed like, I don't know, it's a kind of an unnecessary ad. I'm not really sure. It seems like the only reason they did it was for story. I don't know, not story. I guess that's the only reason you do anything. But like, they wanted her to be tougher, stronger, be able to like put her through more, physical situations that would have killed a regular person, but have her last longer. But again, those feel like more tropey type reasons to have it be than some real natural progression of a story. I don't know. It just, yeah. I mean, it was cool. It was well executed, but I'm not really sure that it was super important to anything plot wise.
I also didn't like the fact of the new future that the human resistance. I mean, they have the ability to make super soldiers, and they have this kick-ass drop ship, and they have these awesome weapons. It's like, what happened to the ragtagginess of it, you know?
Right.
Like in the original Future War, they're driving around in rusted out pickup trucks, you know?
Yeah.
With reappropriated weapons that they've taken off of dead Terminators. Like that's
Right.
how they
They're like little more than like rats to the big, monstrous robot overlords, I guess. In
Right.
this one, you're right. They're much more of like a, I don't know. The war seems more.
even.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just that crotchety old man who doesn't like the new stuff.
Yeah, well, that's probably what we're serving up here. I mean, it's if it's your first time ever coming to anything related to the Terminator franchise, you'll probably think it's great, even though you are objectively making a mistake and should absolutely begin with the first Terminator. I mean, that movie's just so good. It's so classic. It was such an event movie at that time period and totally holds up. It has that rewatchability that when it's on, I'm drawn in, that whole thing. Whereas this movie, if it's ever playing on HBO or streaming somewhere and I happen to be walking by, I'm not really sure that there's any scene that will make me be like, I got to plop down and just watch this scene because it was so cool, But
Did you guys like the first or second Terminator better?
I'm definitely like the first one for sure better. Terminator 2, I think, ends up... James Cameron occasionally succumbs to like cheesiness. Like some of the dialogue in Terminator 2 is a little off-putting, and Eddie Furlong is like really hard to like. I mean, the John Connor in that one, intentional or not, I'm sure they wanted to have him be like a smart alecky little kid, but
Right.
he just like a little bit too slimy and not enough smart alecky. So
You want to care about him, and
Right.
that's hard to do. Yeah.
I think I like T1. I think just a little bit more than T2. I think you were probably like me, Derek, where you watch T1 on HBO or something.
No doubt. Yeah.
Because I didn't see it in the theater. But
Yeah.
seeing T2 in the theater was an experience. Like,
Definitely.
I remember that. So, like, the experience itself, I probably liked watching T2 more than I liked watching T1, but I like T1 as a movie better.
Yeah. And I remember being like really, some of the concepts of T2 were really thought-provoking about the, changing the future and, breaking from fate, and what does it mean to, have this cyclical thing where, someone goes back in time to change something, and it was just like a, maybe at the time, maybe it wasn't really, but at the time it felt like a unique view on the time traveling concept. And so,
Right. I love both, but I think I actually prefer T2. Like if I was going to pop something in the DVD player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just enjoy it more. I think she gets a lot tougher in it.
Definitely.
Linda Hamilton's character. She's really interesting.
Yeah, you're right. She does sort of like largely.
She's not scared anymore.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's really,
she's not intimidated by anything. It's pretty crazy to watch.
It's got one of the best rewatchable scenes with her breaking out of the hospital. I love it.
Yes.
awesome. Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a really good scene.
Smacking the crap out of the guy. I loved it.
Yep. Very cool.
So good. I guess that wasn't as negative as I was expecting.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a total mad sandwich.
Yeah, it's not worthy of hatred.
Right.
But yeah, solid 2, unless you're that type I mentioned and you just want to, you're the turn my mind off kind of thing, and you don't feel particularly tied to the history of the Terminator movies. I think it'd probably land at like a 2.5 to 3 for you, so there we go.
Nice. All right. I guess that's a good place to wrap it up. Do you guys have any final thoughts or anything coming up that's interesting that you want to mention?
I'm mostly just doing Christmas shopping because I'm usually done by July. So for me, I'm in a scramble now, and this weekend's pretty busy. I'm taking some photos at Battlefront Pro Extreme in Ludlow, Mass. There's going to be a wrestling show out there. Fear and the Masses is playing, so I'm gonna go do photos of the show, photos of the band.
Nice.
It's kind of my weekend.
Cool.
Anything coming up with you, Derek?
Yeah, it's sort of. I'm going to be at. I don't know if listeners know what the PAX conventions are, but we have PAX Unplugged coming up, where that's sort of like a gaming convention that takes place in Philadelphia. That's on the 6th of December. But we go out there and we set up like a miniature game store in the tabletop hall there and sell games to thousands and thousands of gamers who show up for that event. So we're in the preparation for that now. This is the month leading up to any of these big conventions is an enormous amount of work for us, and so that's coming up. But yeah, if you're any listeners are going to be at PAX Unplugged, definitely swing by the Battleground booth and say hi.
Awesome.
Nice.
Tonight, I'm actually going into Boston to check out the Boston premiere of Jay and Silent Bob Unplugged.
Oh, nice.
So, gonna be there in I think it's the Wilbur Theater. Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes are gonna be there doing a Q&A. So,
great.
It should be cool.
Yeah,
It'll be a
I'm
fun
so
time.
jealous.
I'm like an old school Kevin Smith fan. I love all those movies. Some of them more than others, obviously, but
Sure.
When I saw Clerks, I just totally connected with it. Like,
Yeah.
I know that life. I am that life. So
yeah, that was an event movie for sure at that time too. It was, everybody came to it and was blown away by its simplicity, but I'm not sure it aged very well, but it definitely was a huge thing at the time.
And I think it gave people that idea of, I can do that too. Like, if I want to be a movie director, I could be a movie director. This guy did it, so can I.
Definitely, yep.
He's definitely inspirational, so I'm looking forward to that tonight.
Exciting.
So, yeah. All right. Thanks again, guys, for listening to another episode. Again, I'd like to ask you to please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media links and outlets on Facebook, YouTube, any of the podcast broadcasting platforms like Spotify, iTunes, or TuneIn. We're listed there. If you could give us any ratings or reviews, we'd love to hear the feedback. But other than that, wish you guys a fun, happy day and a nice weekend. Take care.
We'll be back.